afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in to our Get Out to Vote live stream event, Press, Pushing Our People to Vote. I'm Dr. Helen Holton, the Executive Director of the National Organization of Black County Officials, joined today by members of our leadership, beginning with the Honorable Roy Charles Brooks, Commissioner in Tarrant County, Texas, with Commissioner Rodney Ellis from Harris County, Texas, who is president of the National Association of Black County Officials, with Alicia Bell, who is chair of the Wayne County Commission, a past NABCO president and secretary of the NOBCO board, and Tony Carter, who is chair of the Ramsey County Commission and a member of the NOBCO board. They're all members of our membership organization, and we're here to press, helping you to press your way to get out and vote in this most critical election. This is the election of our lifetime. We're going to start with introductions with everyone letting us know who they are and how they got here and why this is such an important meeting we're having today. Commissioner Brooks.
Thank you, Dr. Holton, and good afternoon to all of those out in the ether listening to this broadcast. I am Roy Charles Brooks, a county commissioner from Tarrant County, Texas, which is Fort Worth, y'all. And I'm chairman of the board of the National Organization of Black County Officials, NABCO. I'm here this afternoon to try to encourage all of our listeners to be involved tomorrow in the most important election of our lifetimes. A lot of you have already voted through the various early voting processes in our counties across America. But just because you have voted doesn't relieve you of responsibilities tomorrow, because you know people who have not yet voted. Don't let them get away with not voting, not on your watch. Get everybody you know and everybody that they know to the polls tomorrow to vote. Why should they vote? One of the most important reasons why they should vote tomorrow is to honor the ancestors who fought, bled, and died to give us the right to vote. Second important reason is that this election is about the heart and soul of America. We've got to restore this nation's heart and soul. And the only way to do that is by voting. And the third reason to vote tomorrow is because there are important local issues on the ballot. People in our county courthouses are on the ballot. I'm on the ballot. And that's reason enough for anybody to vote. So y'all go vote.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Brooks. Commissioner Ellis, why don't you give us reason as to why it's so important in this election that we vote?
Dr. Holton, thank you for inviting me. I'm so glad to be with Chairwoman Bell and Commissioner Tony Carter as well, and my brother Roy Charles Brooks, the chairman from Fort Worth. I too am from Texas. Harris County is in Houston. Most people would think Harris County was in Pennsylvania somewhere until all of the press accounts about the very oppressive effort that my Republican colleagues have been putting forth to try to suppress the vote in Harris County. Texas has some of the most restrictive voter registration and voter participation laws in the country.
That's right.
One of the harshest voter ID laws to be able to vote. And so many people have been disenfranchised in the state. It's a big state. All of our states on this call, including yours, Maryland, by the way, Dr. Holton, are important. Michigan, obviously, is going to be one of those key bellwether states. We hope Texas is at least a toss-up. The polling indicates that, in part because of what's happening here in Harris County. We appointed a bright young Morehouse, Harvard, and Yale graduate to be our interim county clerk. And Chris Hollins has just done a great job. He's done everything that all of us want young people to do. He's been very creative. We put an unprecedented amount of money into running these elections, over $27 million. A good bit of it was CARES money. It's a big county. You know, counties larger than 25 states. So about 4.8 million people in the state. But we have had more people to vote in early voting than we had vote in the last presidential race in the general election. Now, that's pretty impressive in Harris County. As much as I think we can take some credit for it, I think a lot of these voting efforts have had to reverse effect. I think it backfired on people. We just won a victory in a very conservative federal court about an hour before getting on this call. My colleagues might have noticed me trying to eat because I was anxiously awaiting what a federal court would do. And this was a federal judge who shot down DACA, by the way. But he threw out the plaintiffs, ruled in our favor on everything. They will appeal it to the Fifth Circuit, which historically was known by Thurgood Marshall as the anti-civil rights circuit. So we don't know what will happen there. But at least from this very conservative federal judge, I was pretty impressed on virtually every item that came up. He ruled in our favor, and I was pretty impressed over that. But look, as Roy Charles Brooks said, Chairman Brooks said, we owe this to the next generation, and we owe it to our ancestors. There's so much at stake. I think people are also coming out so far because what else could they do? In the middle of a pandemic, with serious concerns about how that had been handled on the federal level, you know, people were ready to get out and show whether they were for or against the administration in charge. But I think that this is going to be a very important cycle. Every vote matters. We got about 2.4 million people who are registered to vote in this county. So 1.4 million have voted here in Houston, Harris County, Texas. But there's still about 1 million people out there. So it could go either way. It all depends on who shows up. Unprecedented amounts of money have been spent. But, you know, I want to encourage people, even if you voted, that's not enough. You find somebody who hadn't voted and you get them to vote. And be careful because of all of the litigation. There seems to be a concerted strategy all around the country. In Pennsylvania, which may really be, Tony, even more important than your great state, by the way. But from everything I've read, Pennsylvania, depends on which analysis you take, may be what makes the decision. But it's just so important. So, and be careful when it's over with. I'm going to go around the polling places, pass out some literature tomorrow, visit some of the polling stations. I'm on the ballot, as is the case with Commissioner Brooks. I'm lucky. I'm unopposed this go around, and our ballot's so long. We elect judges. We elect everything, right, Roy, in Texas?
Absolutely.
Hey, if we had a slot for dog catcher, we'd put that on the ballot. It's all on the ballot. Long ballot. You know, I'm 66 now, so for the first time in my life, I took my mail-in ballot, and I did it by mail, then dropped it off. I didn't trust the Postal Service, and I voted the first day I went to NRG Stadium, near the old Astrodome complex, and put it in the box. But I'm glad to be with all of you. And I just love you, Alicia, Tony, Roy Charles, and Helen.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Commissioner Ellis. And on that note, before I go, I just want to tell you right now, about 70% of the votes cast in all of 2016 have been cast in early voting, which speaks to just, it's almost like it reminds me of 2008 when we went to the polls to vote. So, Chairman Bell, chair of the Wayne County Commission, we go back a long ways, and here we are. Why don't you share with us one of those battleground states again, Michigan, where we just saw not only Vice President Biden, but Mr. Trump in your state in just one day after the other. And I hear he's planning to come back to Michigan again. Tell us who you are, why this is so important.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Dr. Holton. So good to see everyone. Chairman Brooks, Commissioner Ellis, Chairwoman Ramsey of County, Tony Carter. So good to see everyone. This is, as many people have said over and over again, I think the most important election of our lifetime. And it's just so vitally important that we get everyone out to vote. We, unfortunately, in Michigan, a lot of people didn't come out. And I think it's always such a shame when people don't vote. When I go talk to people, canvassing out there, I'm talking about voting. And it breaks my heart because I've had people tell me, I'm not voting. It doesn't affect me. Why should I vote? And I have to then talk them through the reasons why. And the most important thing I say is what Roy said. People died for us to have the right to vote. People died, people sweat. There was a concerted effort to keep us from voting. So we are doing a disservice to our ancestors when we sit at home on any election, be it the primary, the general, if the president's on the ballot, if they're not on the ballot. I, like the rest of you, I'm on the ballot this year, so I want to make sure we get everyone out to vote. But this is just such an important election to so many people. And it's important because, as you stated, the current president has been here several times. I was so happy that President Obama and Vice President Biden were here on Saturday, where Stevie Wonder opened for them. So everyone from both parties are really trying to get people here in Michigan out to vote. It was so close last time. 0.7% was the difference in the presidential election in 2016. I think there was a lot of apathy, but this year I'm just seeing a lot of enthusiasm. We have so many people stressing the point that African Americans are important, our Latino Americans are important, our young people are important. And what we did 2 years ago in 2018, we changed the Constitution so that we have now a no reason absentee voting. Used to be you had to declare that you were going to be out of town or unavailable in order to do an absentee voting. Now anyone can vote absentee, and we have 154,000 people just in the city of Detroit who have already voted. And that's almost as many people that voted in totality in 2018. So we are really enthused. We are telling people, research the candidate, look at the candidate that speaks to your values, your morals, your policy, and then vote for that person. And I'm just so happy that people are getting the message and they are voting. We even had Magic Johnson here last week doing a roundtable with our African American men, just talking about how important it is, because that's demographics that we see don't vote as much as they should. So we have people from all over making sure that those folks understand the importance that they get out to vote. So I'm excited to be here with all of you this evening. I'm excited to this last push for everyone to get out and vote. And again, the president will be here today. I think he's already going to be up north today. And Kamala Harris will be here tomorrow. Senator Harris will be here tomorrow. That just tells you how important Michigan is for this election. So again, thank you, Dr. Holton, for this. This is going to be so important to everyone. That we know that we need you to get out and vote on November 3rd tomorrow. So thank you for this format.
Thank you, Commissioner Bell. And last but by no means least, Commissioner Tony Carter, chair of the Ramsey County Commission, a state that has been touted as one of those that's going to be a big player in the outcome of this election. As the first African American chair of a county in Minnesota, You've got a lot on your shoulders. You are a trailblazer. Tell us why this is so important and what we need to be mindful of in helping people to understand why it's so important for us to get out and vote.
Thank you so much. I am really glad to be here and on the line with you all today. Although it sounds like I've got a little problem with sound. Am I
You're
okay?
great.
Okay, so Minnesota has been a high-performing state in elections dating back as far as I can remember, and we will be a high performer this year as well. I am so thankful that we have great voter turnout. This year, though, you know, we're being rivaled by so many battleground states, and I'm thankful for that too, because we don't mind a little competition. We all need to get our votes in because our votes are our voice. You know, I have a community organization here, which is out in the streets right now telling people got voice, got power. Got votes, got voice. And so we are casting them right now. Certainly, like other states, we have had no excuse absentee voting. And in Minnesota, well, we've had absentee voting, of course, since World War II. And now, with no excuse absentee voting, we had last week cast almost 60% of the votes that were cast in 2016. But you know, that's not enough. So people are out on their feet today. And just also last week, we had a ruling by the US courts that the votes which we had intended we would be able to count in Minnesota 7 days after Election Day must be set aside. Now, our Secretary of State had, along with our legislature, made certain that we had that ability. But the US courts took that away. So they are now being set aside. And we have told everybody, get out to the early voting sites. And in Ramsey County, we have 7 of those. So you can go and you can vote in person. You can return that absentee mail. Don't mail it in now. Take it to an early voting location or take it to the polls tomorrow, because we want to make absolutely sure that every vote is counted. This election makes it so very clear the trials that we have gone through this year, how important leadership is. Leadership matters. To set the example of how we work together during a pandemic to ensure that everybody has health care, because we know that your health affects mine, and that when one is not well, all of us are at risk. So making sure that we're able to keep that health care, knowing that we have so much work to do to shore up a flailing economy right now. But if we don't get well, we can't get wealth. So focusing on that wellness first, and then helping businesses and helping those who can't work. We sure do need to make certain that there are packages that will come out to continue that individual support, that business support to grow our economy. And we're waiting right now, almost being held ransom for this vote. So we know how important it is that as we have seen the injustices perpetuated in our nation, even upheld by some in our nation who have great power to make a change, that if we are going to have justice systems reform, we need leadership that will ensure all of us are working together for equity, for health equity, for racial equity, for equity across all platforms. It is indeed a serious time that we are in. And as we watch today, We're not watching from our seats. We may be here live and in person right now, but we are getting back out in a few moments so that we can go out and we can rally up that vote. People can go to the polls here in Minnesota at early voting locations today. If they go today, great. But if they don't go today, you know we've got to get them out tomorrow because we know got voice, got power. Got vote, got voice.
I love it.
Let's all be heard.
I love it. So when we talk about the issues that should be driving us to the polls, healthcare continues to come up. Pre-existing conditions. In the Black community, health is our greatest wealth. And if we aren't looking out for pre-existing conditions like hypertension, diabetes, heart disease, PTSD, mental illness, COVID, HIV, what does that mean to the counties and the states that you represent in our ability to be a healthy America?
Helen, I might jump in. Roy and I happen to be in one of the two large states in the country that did not take the Obamacare money. Florida is, and look, it's scary. Even during the pandemic, the governor could just sign a piece of paper and take it, but has not done it. One of the cases that the Supreme Court will look at challenging Obamacare comes out of Texas. We got a lot of strange stuff coming out of here. Chairman Brooks, and it'll impact what happens for Chairwoman Carter and Chairwoman Bell. But the Supreme Court will take up that case shortly after the election, regardless of who the president is. That case coming out of Texas to strike it down will come up. It is amazing as I watch the campaigns here. You think everybody's for health care, by the way. The other side just has no shame. They're running ads as though they want to protect coverage for people who have pre-existing conditions. So people got to look to the fall. And look, let me tell you, it's not just the top of the ballot, the president. This is the first time in our state, in Texas, we've ever not had straight ticket voting. There are a lot of states don't have it, but it's a big shift for us. And I mentioned earlier in my county, it's a long ballot. So we got to encourage people to not just vote at the top for federal races, not just state races, come all the way down. And as the chairwomen know, for me, it's different since I've only been in county government for almost 4 years now. I'm the last thing on the ballot. Thank God I'm unopposed, because now, of course, they got to go hit DDD or RR, whatever you want to hit each time. So it's a big challenge. But healthcare is super important, and it's on the ballot. You just don't see healthcare, but it's on the ballot.
You're absolutely right, Commissioner, because as many of you know, and I neglected to say, in Wayne County, Detroit is our largest city within Wayne County. And when the COVID crisis began, we were hit so terribly hard in Detroit. And Detroit is 80% African-American city. So we were hit so very hard. And what is going to be so interesting going forward is that COVID has, and you will be left with pre-existing conditions that are going to be here, unfortunately for some people, for the rest of their lives. So that is going to be so difficult. Now, luckily, Michigan was one of the states that had expanded Medicaid. So we did, even with the Republican governor at the time, we did have the Obamacare. And that's great because, without health, you don't have wealth. But that COVID really hit our community so very hard. And for those who didn't have insurance, that's a strain for them. Those who are going to have those pre-existing conditions, we cannot let that be eliminated from Obamacare, because there are going to be so many people with those conditions that had COVID. So yes, this health care is certainly on the ballot on tomorrow, and it's so very important to our community in particular. And I know people know that, but you don't really know that unless it hits home for you. And I've known people to pass away with COVID. I've known people to have had it and they're still suffering from it. So we have to make sure that we let everyone know that that is one of the most important things on the ballot on tomorrow, is what we're going to do with our healthcare system and Obamacare, and making sure that that is preserved and even expanded as we move forward.
And I just want to bring up the whole notion about women and health care for women, when we begin to talk about reproductive justice, reproductive rights, and choice, that is a subset of what's on the ballot. As we all know, Roe v. Wade is under attack. And, this is not about whether you're pro-life or pro-choice or whatever. But what I think about when we take away a woman's right to choose, what does that mean for babies that women don't want? Who's going to care for them?
Right, absolutely. And our maternal mortality rate has grown so much over the last few years. So that's another issue related to all of that and what we're going to do with this women's health. Like I said, it's not pro or against abortion. It's about a woman's right to choose what she wants to have done with her body, and that being her choice and not a man's choice or someone else's choice. So all of that is so important as we look at the health and the whole health of all of us as Americans. I won't even say women, blacks, whites, just as Americans, because as we look at hypertension, diabetes, infant mortality, maternal mortality, all of those are so very important. And you like I said, you don't really know unless it affects you personally. And I think all of those things that I mentioned affects almost every American personally at some point. Their mother, their father, their sister, their brother, someone has one of those ailments, and then to not be able to have the medication that you need that's affordable, and then not be able to get the care that you need to manage that is going to be a detriment to our society.
Affordability and accessibility. And, it's not just about abortion. It is about clinics that do examinations, that provide health care for women and make that health care affordable and accessible. And so all of this that stands before us with justices that we see will be deciding upon these issues is critical for us, and to have leadership that will place policy in perspective for us to protect our health as women. And as women's health goes, so goes the health of the country. Commissioner Bell was just mentioning the concerns around maternal fatality, but also infant mortality and the concerns that exist around caring for that early care of our youngest citizens is so critical. The health care, whether we're talking about maternal health, infant health, or preventive health, is all on the ballot. And how we can use that insurance to cover those preventive health or chemical health concerns is also very, very important to us. Of course, in African American communities and communities of color, we have the highest rate of chronic disease. And so adding to that, this COVID and its circumstances and remnants as chronic disease, we need to be certain that we are caring for pre-existing conditions as well.
And think about it. COVID will be a pre-existing condition if you've had it. And we're already beginning to experience an uptick in what's happening with COVID. And so the millions of Americans that are impacted by it. But let's remember our young people up to the age of 26 that are adults still in college or school who are covered under parents' insurance. What happens to them with no health care when you talk about the impact of it? So
the overriding consideration in all of this is that elections have consequences, whether it is health care, whether it is health disparities, infant or maternal health, whether it is insurability. Texas is the state with the largest uninsured population in the nation. Texas has a long way to go. And voting is the only way we're going to get there. Texas is not only the voter suppression capital of America. Texas is the most parsimonious state when it comes to handing out federal benefits to its citizens. We leave billions of dollars on the table every year just because our legislature won't put up the match to draw down federal dollars. Elections have consequences. We need to elect people, not only in Texas, but across this land, who have the interests of our people at heart and are willing to stand up and make changes so that the conditions under which our people live are made better. I like to tell the young people in my community that if they're gonna have an election for dog catcher, you need to get out and vote for that person who's gonna catch dogs the way you think dogs ought to be caught in your community. Every election is important, and elections have consequences.
Helen, I just add that as one of the two males on the call, and Roy Charles and I agree on this. A woman's right to choose what to do with her body is on the ballot. And I can remember a time when people were in back alleys and in attics, and I don't think we ought to return to that. And I think a lot of my friends who happen to disagree on the issue of choice ought to be as committed to trying to provide access to health care and programs to help children that exist as they are in being adamant about trying to deny any woman their right to make that decision on what to do with their bodies. We men make the decisions on what to do with our bodies, and I think women should be able to do that too. And I speak for Commissioner Brooks and myself on that.
I want to bring up Dr. William Barber, who resurrected the Poor People's Campaign, because this election is very much about Black, brown, and poor people. How do you all see yourselves positioning to get the least of these who feel like their vote won't matter? I don't need to come out. They hold power that they don't know they hold. How do we get them to get out and vote?
Thank you so much for asking that question, Helen. You know, I have been working here in Ramsey County for a long period of time, because it's not just about this moment, which is the day or the time period during which we go out and vote, but it's about engaging. It's about having those folks for whom government decisions have a direct impact involved in making those decisions. And of course, the vote is certainly the paramount way in which we can all, as a community, join together to ensure that those who are making the decisions have that philosophy and have that understanding of government, not just by, for, and of the people, but government with the people. So in Ramsey County, we've been working on citizen engagement committees, on getting citizens involved and working out in our community to get others to vote, but not just to get others to vote, to help us if we're talking about our policies in out-of-home placement, or our policies in corrections, or even our policies around COVID, and making certain that organizations and on the ground, just people, plain people, are able to help us drive forward the COVID assistance that's being happened. The net of it is that we have got to get people working with us, and we have got to be working with the people every day. And now is a time where that citizen engagement, that ongoing, on the ground assistance that people, not just assistance, but decisions that people have been making with us is really paying off because they see their role and they understand the impact of that role, and they are taking on that leadership to ensure that others understand and can see the difference that it makes when we are working with people, when people are working with us. Getting the vote out is an example of that. And I am glad to say that in Ramsey County, we've been encouraging that kind of work hand in hand. But of course, we've got this political part of us too. And the walking together and the talking together and the going to community organizations and the posting on our Facebook and our Twitter pages and just making certain that every organization we are a part of and every individual we talk to is taking that message. You know, we've got a festival going on in one of my neighborhoods right now. I'll be going out there and we've got food and we've got voting information and people are able to get tested, have their blood pressure taken, find out about what's going on in the community. But most of all, understand if they haven't voted, they can still get to an early voting location tonight, or they can get out in the morning and get to their polling location, but also that they can take somebody with them. So just trying to make sure we're on the streets and we're getting that message out, and that people are also carrying that forward to their families, to their friends.
And you know what? The good point that Tony just mentioned is that you can't just do it at election time. You know, people need to know, you need to be connected to people all through the year. People get offended if you just come around during election time, you know? That's
For
the one,
sure.
the biggest thing that they'll say, I don't see you but every 4 years, or I don't see you but every 2 years. This has to be ongoing, and you have to continually build that relationship with the community and be there with them always. And I think that's so very important because what Reverend Barber is doing is being with the people always and understanding that, you know, some people aren't as engaged in the weeds like we are with politics. They want to know how they're going to feed their family. They want to know how they're going to afford their medications. So you have to make politics are relatable to them at a kitchen table level where they understand that the decisions that are made at the top and how those decisions are going to affect them in their household. They don't want to hear all this other stuff. They want to know how it's going to affect them directly. And that takes time to cultivate those relationships, to really get in and be with the people at all times. And I'm glad that we do a lot of that here in Wayne County and in Detroit, because you have to be with people all the ways for them to come out and vote. If you just abandon them and just show up, you know, every 4 years, people are not dumb. They know when they're being taken advantage of. They want to know that you care about them always, and not just when it's election time.
I think Reverend Barber started those demonstrations in North Carolina. And they called them Moral Mondays. But I was a state legislator, as you all know, for a long time. And usually Monday is the day everybody gets back. And then Tuesday is the day that generally the state house and state senate are meeting. Wednesday, then the senators ease out of there on Thursday. But he do his Moral Mondays to make the point. They have people demonstrate on the state capitol, and it's had a tremendous impact. Then John Lewis had a great phrase, and I just love it so much. He said, in a democracy, the power to vote is the most effective way to bring about change, or something to that effect. And it really is. You know, after the George Floyd tragedy, Tony, you and I talked a lot, and we had a big demonstration in Houston. I think 60,000 people. Mayor Turner and the police chief and all of us were out there. And knowing I'm old and black in politics, going to most stuff than I ought to go to, how could I not go? And you know, when I was out there, I was thinking, we could still register to vote when that went on. I should have had my staff go out there and set up voter registration tables. Because those 60,000 people who marched, if it's just about talk, so some of those who will say you've been in politics all your life, it's just talk. If you don't vote, all you're doing is talking. You know, you can throw the fists in the air, but you better open those fingers and get in that ballot box, because that is the only effective way to bring about change in a democracy. And I tell it to people, even when they get mad, even if you want to vote against me, just vote. And I'm going to listen to you more if you voted, even if you vote against me, because I might persuade you. But if you don't vote, if you're not registered, I'm going to do all I can for you. but you're not in the equation.
With our young people, we have to continue to emphasize the nexus between activism and action. And as Commissioner Ellis just said, the most effective action that we can take is to vote. Now, to be sure, we need our activists out in the street, bringing attention to the issues that affect our communities. But if that activism is not connected to an action like voting, then there's something missing. I like to tell people that voting is the way that resources in America are allocated. Communities that vote get stuff. Communities that don't vote get nothing. And that's an easy dichotomy for people to understand. If your community votes, your community gets stuff that it needs to prosper. If your community does not vote, you get nothing. You got no voice. You don't exist in terms of the system of passing out resources. So voting and activism must go hand in hand.
And that is so very clear, given all that is happening and always has to keep people from voting. Because those who have and don't want to share feel that that's their way of holding on. They have bought it and they have moved forward. To be careful to exercise that vote. But many of us understand that it's not a net sum game. It's not about what I get and what you get, but it's about creating a healthy community. And if all of us participate and all of our voices are heard, we have the best opportunity to do that. You know, this fear around voting that has been created during this time frame is a fear that we must conquer. Let's not let it be that we're apathetic about it. Let's make certain everybody understands this is our opportunity to change. If we show up and show out and do what we know we need to do, we will have the leadership that we deserve. We will gain that leadership.
And you have to know that if it wasn't so important, people wouldn't try to take it from us, right?
There you go.
So we have to know it must be important since they're trying to take it. So we have to make sure we let our young people know that as well.
Yeah.
The reason that voter suppression is practiced on such a broad scale in Texas is because Texas is on the verge of becoming a majority minority state. And those in power recognizing that the numbers are going to turn against them are determined to do everything they can think of to hang on to power to which they are no longer entitled by virtue of the numbers and the population. So voter suppression, gerrymandering, voter ID, all of these tactics have become the way that politics is practiced in Texas. And the only way to stop that is for us to vote our strength, vote our numbers, assert our power.
I want to throw into the mix of this systemic racism. Now, we've heard candidates say they don't believe systemic racism is real, but I would say everyone on this call knows that it is. What is the relationship between your vote and how we address the oppressive disenfranchisement of people that are rapidly becoming the majority of this nation?
You know, most of the wealth in this country, not just in America, but in the West, Dr. Holton, is directly related to the slave trade. And oftentimes we try and dismiss that. And then after the slave trade ended, for a quick minute, we had Reconstruction. One of my kids is over in North Carolina for the election, and she was telling me about a town over there that was pretty much taken over by a group of vigilantes, took the black folks out, the progressive whites out who were running the city, very much like we had in Oklahoma, but we don't think about it. But look, it's a direct result of slavery, a minute of Reconstruction, and then you went into an era of racial terror where they just pick up a black person because you were looking on the wrong side of the street or any reason. Then you ended up with that convict leasing system, and not just in the South, might I add, all across the country. And so a lot of the problems that we have today are a direct result of that. And the fact that Thurgood Marshall won the case to integrate the schools in court, but it didn't happen. Kamala Harris was exactly right. Even if it was painful, we'd been better off to have gone through that period then, so things would be far more leveled out than they are today. In virtually everything we do in county government, there's a focus on equity. And a lot of it, after the murder of George Floyd, President Chairwoman Carter, over in your state, may have been Houstonian, but that really hit a spark. Why that case compared to so many others, I don't know. Maybe because the video got out so quick, and maybe because we were all at home focused on attention. But Floyd's young daughter was right. Now her dad is known around the world, but the focus is on equity, not just in the criminal justice system. How about on flooding relief, on disaster relief, on virtually everything we do in government? Policies have been put in place so you take care of those who have so they can keep it, instead of bringing people up. That's institutional racism. How do you get rid of it? You vote the people who protected the hell out of office. That's how you get rid of it.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, that's it. How do we address it? We put people in place, again, like I said earlier, that has the morals, the values, the vision that you share. You know, then that's the power of voting. If you don't vote, you can't sit around and complain that X, Y, and Z person is in office and they're making X, Y, and Z decision that's going against what you know is right. But when you vote, you put the people in power who do have that decision making, who can make those decisions. Is so very important. And I'll even say here in Michigan, I'm glad that, you know, in some states not the case, but once someone has completed their time in our correctional facilities, they can vote. If someone is in our jail and they haven't been convicted yet, they can vote. So we make a concerted effort to touch those people who you wouldn't think could vote, and making sure that they know that they can be part of the process, and they must be part of the process. Because, you know, we talk about the presidency all the time, we talk about the Senate, but looking locally, your judges, your mayors, your city council members, those people who are closest to you are the ones who are going to make the decisions for you. So you have to understand that, yes, the president and on down are important, but those people who you may see at the grocery store as your judge and council person and mayor are just as important. And when those elections come through, you have to make sure that you are still putting the people in place locally who are going to have those values and morals that you have to make sure that you get just decisions. I'm so glad that we have the Attorney General in Minnesota who I think is going to help make the just decisions as we move forward. But then you have other places, Kentucky, where that maybe was not the case as much. So it's important who you put in office at every level, and then that will address systemic racism that we have. Because if you don't think it exists, you're not going to do anything about it. But if you put people in office who know it exists, then they will address that and make change.
Absolutely. And it is so much about acknowledging that the impact of that systemic racism was not a day and done. It is with us today. It continues with us today. And as we look at the structures that serve us in government, in business, in every area of life, we are looking at structures that were built to benefit maintaining that system that kept people of color at bay, that kept them in circumstances that are not favorable for our lives. This is where the health disparities were created, the housing disparities, the disparities in our justice system, the disparities in, well, you know, go on and on and on, education and everything. And this is why we have to be diligent about transforming those systems. It can't be business as usual. So if we're voting for people that don't recognize that these systems perpetuate those injustices, we are voting for the continuation of those very injustices. Our Attorney General, I'm glad that you mentioned, Attorney General Keith Ellison and our county are able to partner on those transformative efforts. In fact, on making certain that even those who have been through our prison system and are out today are able to get their crimes expunged, you know, so that those records, which continue to perpetuate those injustices and those disparities, are able to, where it makes sense, to be erased so that they have the chance to get beyond those collateral consequences. But not just in the justice system, in every system. Those issues that are perpetuated must be dismantled. We just last year closed down our corrections out of home placement center for young people. Had been in operation for 100 years. And we were able to close it because we have people on our board and in this area who are making decisions together, not just to do things better, but to do better things. And we know that young people can do better in the community, where they're able to go to school, where they have coaches, where they are able to remain drug-free and crime-free. And oh, by the way, have a trajectory toward becoming citizens and contributing individuals in our community. Those are the kinds of folks that we need who recognize it, who call it what it is, and who can move us beyond those racist systems, which have perpetuated, would continue the racist results that we see today.
As we're winding down, I want to talk about, and I think this is really important, down ballot voting. And you've all alluded to it to some extent, but it is critical. As county leaders, what we know is that there's not a piece of legislation on Capitol Hill that did not begin in a local community. Counties, we represent the foundational place that all things go up from. What are you doing to see that people don't just go and vote president and vice president, but they come down the ballot?
We've got a brand new system of voting in Texas that is new for this election cycle, this November election. In prior gubernatorial and presidential elections, one could go in and vote a straight party ticket just by pulling the party lever, and it would populate your ballot with everybody in that political party. The legislature, in its infinite wisdom, in the last term, got rid of straight ticket voting. So now we've had to train our voters in Texas how to vote under this new system, that they have to start at the top of the ballot and vote in every race until they reach the bottom of the ballot. And that's important to us at the county level because our races are at the bottom of the ballot. So we have adopted strategies like it's not enough to just get rid of Trump. You got to come all the way down to the bottom of the ballot. My name is next to the last race on our ballot. So it's important to me that our people come all the way down to the bottom of the ballot. Local races, people at the courthouse, those positions are the ones that people at the local level interact with most. You're never going to run into the President of the United States at your local Albertson store, but you'll run into me. And I get cornered in the vegetable aisle every time I go to the grocery store by a constituent who's got something that they want to discuss. These races are important. And if you don't go all the way down to the bottom of the ballot, you're going to miss those important races.
Absolutely. Commissioner Ellis?
Well, following Roy's lead, we're putting a lot of money into radio, direct mail. Candidates have to do a lot of it, but some independent groups are making the case from top to the bottom, vote in every race. Look, a lot of folks don't really know what county government is, by the way. We're at the bottom, but it's so important. I mean, we control the largest mental health institution in every county in America. And unfortunately, it's the county jail. Most people in there have some mental health issue. So we got to spend time educating them. It's new in Texas, as Roy said. There's a lot of pushback. By the way, we are now a minority state. They're here now. Oh, when I first went to the legislature, Henry Cisneros would give that speech about people worried about us coming. And he changed that about 4 years ago. We're here. This state has very much a Latino flavor. And that's important. About 12% African-American, at least 40% Hispanic, maybe 2% Asian American. Only 4 states in America, by the way, fall in that category. First one was Hawaii, always was minority. Second one of all places was New Mexico. It's not a black thing. Only about 200 of us over there. No, maybe 1.5%. And then California, then Texas. And Alicia, it won't be Michigan. It won't be Ramsey. It won't be Minnesota next. It'll probably be New York and Florida. Both will go. In Illinois, sizable Hispanic growth in Illinois. But look, you just got to educate folks. And look, I think they get it now. I got to run. I do want to make this point, at least in my county, these young people, that's what's fueling this growth and the voter turnout. I mean, they do this, I got to see in statistics, but they're doing that regression analysis. That's these new first-time voters. And I think their vote becomes out there. I got to run because I got to get 1 at 5. Dr. Holton, I miss all of y'all. Stay safe.
Well, we've all got to run. And as we're coming down to our time, it's such an important day. I want to thank each and every one of you for showing up. I just want everyone who's watching to understand we're going to do more of these conversations and discussions going forward, because it's important for us to show up, to show out, to educate people on how to get engaged, how to move the needle towards justice, equity, and inclusion. It matters. You matter. The people you represent matter most. I want to thank you all. I'm Dr. Helen Holton, Executive Director of the National Organization of Black County Officials and the National Association of Black County Officials. And to our esteemed panelists today, thank you, thank you, thank you. And look to see us again. This session you'll be able to catch on our YouTube channel. Please follow us on social media. You can find us under NOBCO 1982 on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. And we'll be coming to LinkedIn soon. Thank you. Go vote. Make
Vote.
your vote count.
Good luck to all my colleagues tomorrow.
Thank you, and good luck to you.
Good luck to all of you all, and vote.
Good
When
luck
we
to
vote,
us
we win.
all.
Yeah.
All right. Let's show up and show out.
Thank you.
You all. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.